Never buy these types of homes in Toronto, Ontario. Toronto's condo market just hit a 30-year low with only 28 new pre-construction units sold in September, and people are still falling into the same trap, buying places that drain their finances for years. I've been in real estate for 18 years, and today I'm breaking down the 12 home types in Toronto that keep catching buyers with hidden costs, structural problems, and tough resale value. Okay, so here's something that sounds exciting until you're 3 years in and your property value hasn't moved. Phase 1 units in massive redevelopment projects. You buy into phase 1 of a big development, right? You're excited. New building, great amenities, solid location, but then phase 2 gets built, and then 3, and then phase 4. And suddenly you're competing with brand new units for the next decade while your property just sits there. Regent Park is the perfect example. Phase 1 through 3 are largely built out, with the last phase 3 building targeted for completion around 2024. But guess what? The city approved rezoning for phases 4 and 5 back in July 2023. Those phases are expected to span another full decade, and they're adding even more units to the mix. So if you bought phase 1, you've been competing with phase 2 and phase 3 for years now. Now you get to compete with 4 and 5. And just wait until you see the condominium fees in a few minutes, because the numbers are brutal. Now, the Canary District is another way. Phase 1 sold out. Phase 2 is done. They're still developing later phases. Every time a new phase opens, your phase 1 unit has to compete with something shinier and newer. But here's what makes this worse right now. The condo market is frozen. Industry data shows the annual new condo sales in Toronto area fell to a 28-year low. Sales have dropped 64% since 2021, falling to just 4,500 units in 2024. Analysts are saying we need inventory to fall by 25% or more before things start to recover. And that's not expected until early 2026 at the earliest. So phase 1 buyers are sitting in a property that already is competing with multiple newer phases in a market that's completely stalled out. This built-in competition stops your appreciation before it even starts, which matters especially when you're looking at properties with ongoing fees. Speaking of which, let's talk about a fee structure most buyers don't even know exists. Before we move on, quick note: if you're looking at properties in Toronto right now and want to avoid these traps before you make an offer, I work with buyers in Toronto market every day and can help you spot red flags during showings. My contact info is in the description below. Don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, back to the video. Freeholds on private lanes or POTL properties. All right, you know what nobody tells you until after you sign the offer, that your freehold house comes with monthly fees. That's called a POTL, and it stands for parcel of tied land. And it's one of those things buyers don't find out about until it's too late. Here's how it works. You buy what looks like a freehold house. No condo fees, right? Wrong. You've got monthly fees for the private lane, shared services, maintenance of the road, and parking areas. Typical fees run $50 to $200 a month, lower than condo fees, but it's still an ongoing cost most buyers don't see coming. And here's where it gets worse. Those POTL fees reduce your mortgage qualification just like condo fees do. So if you're stretching to afford the house, those fees can knock you out of your borrowing range. Resale is more complex than a standard freehold because buyers need to review the condo corporation documents and budgets, and disagreements can arise over how much spend on maintenance. You'll see this a lot in Leslieville, Davenport, Downsview, Innsville, developments, and Scarborough stacked towns. These are areas where developers carved out private lanes to fit more homes on the land. Now you're stuck paying for those shared spaces forever. POTL properties aren't automatically bad, but if you're not expecting those fees, they can completely change your budget and your timeline. You need to ask upfront, get the exact fee amount, and factor it into your affordability before you can make an offer. Trust me on this one. Which brings us to another affordability trap that catches people chasing lower prices. New GTA subdivision homes far from transit. Picture this: you save $200,000 buying out in Milton or Bradford. Then you lose it all sitting in traffic for the next decade. Places like Bradford, East Gwimblbury, Pickering, Milton, Caledon, these communities are growing fast and the entry prices look tempting. But here's what you're actually signing up for: slow appreciation compared to transit-connected areas, long commutes because there's no nearby infrastructure, and you're waiting years for schools and retail to get built. Milton averaged 965,000 in November 2025, down 6% a year over year, and the GTA new home market hit record low sales in July 2025. And the insurance data on flood zones we're covering later is going to show you another hidden cost in some of these newer developments, so stay with me. But let's finish this first. Commute times have become a huge factor in buyer decisions. Traffic congestion is weighing heavily on what people choose. So you're out in a new subdivision with no amenities, yet you're driving everywhere. You're hoping the community fills in around you. Meanwhile, buyers are choosing transit access more than ever. That means your appreciation potential is limited compared to properties near TTC or GO stations. Look, I'm not saying these areas are terrible or bad. Some people want that suburban lifestyle and they're fine with trade-offs. But if you're buying for investment or you need to sell in 5 to 7 years, these far out subdivisions can really slow down your equity growth. Just something to think about. And speaking of location challenges, there's one type of street that consistently underperforms: homes on busy roads. Every 10 decibels of traffic noise costs you 6% of your property value. Think about that while you're looking at a house on Bathurst. Bathurst Street, Dufferin Street, Eglinton Avenue, St. Clair Avenue, Finch Avenue, Kingston Road, and Scarborough. These are the big, busy roads that carry thousands of cars every day. Research shows a direct link between traffic noise and lower property values. And it's not just the noise. You've got health impacts too. Cognitive issues, sleep problems, mental health effects, heart problems. Kingston Road in Scarborough is a 6-lane major road. Imagine living right on that. The traffic never stops, the noise is constant, and buyers actively avoid these properties when they have other options. Lower appreciation, noise pollution, health concerns, that's what you get with a busy road property. If you're considering buying, factor in that you'll be selling to a smaller buyer pool and you'll likely see slower appreciation over time. The numbers don't lie on this one. Now, let's look at a practical issue that might seem minor, but absolutely kills resale. Townhomes with laneway-only garages. Try backing out of a narrow laneway in February with 2 feet of snow. Then tell me this isn't a deal breaker. Townhomes where the garage is only accessible through a narrow laneway. You've got difficult vehicle access problems with deliveries and moving, tough snow removal, complicated garbage collection, and buyers hate it. I mean, they really hate it. You see this a lot in Liberty Village, Leslieville, Danforth Village, Bronzesville, Seton Village, Little Italy, Junction Triangle. These are all areas where developers squeezed in townhomes and stuck the garages at the back, accessible only through tight laneways. And if you're thinking about building a laneway suite, that's going to cost you $300,000 to $500,000. Plus, you've got to deal with complex regulations and zoning approvals. Buyers strongly prefer traditional driveway access. It's easier, it's safer, it's more practical. So when you go to sell a townhome with laneway-only garage access, you're immediately dealing with resale resistance. People just don't want to deal with it, you know? And while we're talking about ongoing costs that hurt resale, let me show you the condo fee trap. Condominiums with high maintenance fees, your $1,020 a month condo fees today, that's $1,500 in 5 years, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's break down what high actually means in 2025. For newer buildings under 10 years, you're looking at about 65 to 75 cents per square foot. That's reasonable. Mid-age buildings, 10 to 20 years, you're looking at about 75 cents to 85 cents per square foot. Still manageable. But amenity-heavy downtown towers, you're looking at 90 cents to $1.50 for more per square foot. And speaking of fees and complications, wait until you see what knotted tube wiring does to your options. I'll break that down shortly. Now, here's where it gets really brutal. Fees are expected to increase 6 to 7% every year. So if you're paying $1,020 a month now, by the time you go to sell, that could be $1,500 or more. That kills your appreciation because future buyers are going to be deterred by those high ongoing costs. Plus, special assessments are becoming more common. These are one-time charges to cover financial shortfalls or major repairs. They're legally binding on all unit owners. So you could suddenly be on the hook for thousands of dollars on top of your regular fees. It's crazy. High fees don't just hurt your monthly budget. They stop your property from appreciating over time because every buyer who looks at your unit is calculating those ongoing costs into their affordability. The higher the fees, the smaller your buyer pool. It's that simple. But ongoing costs aren't the only thing that shrinks your buyer pool. Let's talk about a risk factor most people completely overlook. Homes in Toronto's flood risk zones. Okay, so a significant share of older homes in Toronto's core have had drain or sewer work done at some point, and most buyers have no idea they're looking in a flood zone until the insurance quote comes back. Dun dun dun. The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority has official floodplain mapping. The City of Toronto has completed basement flooding studies across 67 areas. These studies identify which neighborhoods are at risk for flooding and drainage issues. Rockcliffe Smythe is one of the highest risk areas, along with the Don River Basin and the Humber River Basin. You've also got moderate risk in Leaside, Scarborough Bluffs, and Lawrence Park. Here's what that means for you. Insurance costs in lower risk areas for sewer backup and overland flood coverage run about $150 to $300 per year. But in high risk areas, you're paying way higher premiums. Some insurers just refuse coverage completely. Sewer backup insurance is pretty common. Most homeowners have it. But overland flood insurance is less common, and it's crucial if you're in one of these bad flood zones. Before you buy, check the TRCA floodplain map viewer. Look at the city's basement flooding study for that area. If you're in a high-risk zone, factor in the insurance costs and the potential for future flooding when you're calculating your long-term ownership expenses. Do your homework on this one. And while we're on the topic of things that make insurance difficult, here's a big one in older homes. Homes with knob and tube wiring or aluminum wiring. A lot of insurers won't even quote you. They say no when they hear knob and tube. Let's start with knob and tube. This wiring system was phased out in 1950 and 1960s in Ontario. It has no ground wire, was never designed for today's electrical loads, and aging or modified knob and tube can increase shock and fire risk, especially when it's been tapped into over the years. Replacement costs run $8,000 to $25,000 with an average of $12,000 to $25,000. That's $10 to $22 per square foot. And here's the kicker. Many insurers refuse coverage on homes with knob and tube wiring, or they charge way higher premiums. So even if you're okay with replacing it eventually, you might not be able to get insurance in the meantime. You see this a lot in East York, Corso Italia, Little Portugal, Leslieville, Danforth Village. Older neighborhoods where the homes were built before modern electrical standards. Aluminum wiring is a little different. It was installed from the mid-1960s to the late 1970s. According to the Electrical Safety Authority of Ontario, it's safe if properly connected and terminated per the Ontario Electrical Safety Code. But the problem is overheating and failure at the connection. Some insurers won't provide or renew coverage without an ESA inspection, and you may need to do repairs or replacement and get an ESA certificate of acceptance before they'll insure you. If you're looking at a home with knob and tube or aluminum wiring, factor in the replacement costs, the insurance complications, and the resale challenges. A lot of buyers will just walk away when they hear about wiring issues. You need to be prepared for a smaller buyer pool when it's time to sell, right? And speaking of underground issues that create expensive surprises, let's talk about the plumbing time bomb. Boo, boo, boo. Homes with original clay sewer pipes. Here's the thing. Tree roots don't care that you just bought the house. They're coming for those clay pipes, whether you're ready or not. Clay pipes are super susceptible to tree root infiltration, cracks, and collapse. That leads to costly sewer backups with replacements. A huge number of older homes in Toronto's central core have had drain repairs and replacement costs. Minor repairs run $650 to $3,000. Partial replacement is $3,000 to $8,000. Full replacement is $3,000 to $15,000. Depends on whether you go traditional or trenchless methods. You see this a lot in Leaside, the Beaches, Rosedale, Hyde Park, and Lawrence Park. These are all older neighborhoods where the original clay pipes are still in place and they're breaking down. Tree root infiltration is a major problem, especially during heavy rain or spring thaw. And sometimes you've got sections of piping that don't have proper sloping, which makes the backup issues even worse. If you're buying an older home in one of these neighborhoods, get a sewer scope inspection before you close. That'll show you the condition of the pipes and whether you're looking at a replacement soon. Because if you buy without checking and you end up with a backup 6 months later, you're on the hook with thousands of dollars in repair. Trust me, you don't want that surprise. Now let's look at another access issue that buyers consistently underestimate. Rear garage homes with narrow laneway access. You know what makes a moving driver charge extra? Tight laneways where one wrong turn means a repair bill. Rear garages access only through narrow laneways. You see this in Roncesvalles, Seton Village, Little Italy, Junction Triangle. These are homes where the garage is at the back of the property and you've got to navigate a narrow laneway to get to it. Tight access, higher accident rates, delivery issues, problems for emergency vehicles, and resale resistance because buyers avoid these properties due to the access difficulties. It's not just about parking your car, it's about moving trucks, service vehicles, and deliveries. Everything becomes more complicated when you're dealing with a narrow laneway. Most buyers in Toronto still prefer a straightforward driveway over threading down a tight rear laneway every time they park. And honestly, I totally get that. But narrow laneways aren't the only structural issue that create legal headaches down the road. Homes with old unpermitted additions, up to $50,000 for a first offense. That's what unpermitted work can cost you under the Ontario Building Code Act. You could be looking at insulation issues that don't meet the Ontario Building Code's requirements, faulty wiring, plumbing problems, structural issues, even floors from foundation settling. And here's where it gets expensive. Insurance claims related to unpermitted work may be denied. Buyers are hesitant, lenders may require fixes before they'll approve financing, and you could face legal penalties up to $50,000 for your first offense, $100,000 for repeat offenses. Plus, if it's discovered during the sale, you could be hit with double permit charges and big remediation costs if structural work is required. You see unpermitted additions a lot in Little Italy, Corsa Italia, Riverside, and Leslieville. These are neighborhoods where homeowners added space over the years without pulling permits. Now it's creating problems for the next buyer. If you're looking at a home with an addition, verify that it was done with proper permits. Ask for a permit history from the City of Toronto. Get a home inspector to look at the structural integrity, because if it wasn't done right, you're inheriting someone else's problem and it could cost you tens of thousands to fix. Do your due diligence on this one. And now for the property feature that surprises buyers more than anything else we've covered. Homes with no legal parking. This is the one nobody sees coming until they try to sell. No legal parking in Toronto doesn't just hurt your resale value, it can kill it. Here's what you need to know about front pad parking in Toronto. You need a minimum of width of 6 meters. If your lot is smaller than that, you need Committee of Adjustment approval, which adds cost and time. You've got to meet landscaping requirements, pay an annual licensing fee, and cover all city permit fees. And here's the worst part. Parkdale High Park has a complete ban on front yard parking. Other wards allow applications if your property meets the criteria, but you're still dealing with a complicated approval process. So what does this mean for your resale? It massively reduces your buyer pool. People in Toronto know how valuable parking is. If your property doesn't have it, they're gonna factor it into their offer price, or they'll just move on to the next listing that does have parking. You see this issue a lot in the Beaches, Danforth, downtown semis, and areas with narrow lots or heritage designations. These are neighborhoods where lots were laid out before parking was a priority. Now you're stuck with no legal options. If you're looking at a home without parking, ask yourself if you can live with that long term, because when it's time to sell, you're gonna feel that limitation in your price and in how long your property sits on the market. It's a big deal. These 12 property types aren't just harder to sell, they're designed to drain your equity while you own them. The Toronto market is giving you the leverage to be selective right now, so use it before conditions shift again. If you're buying in Toronto and want me to review properties before you make an offer, email me at heather@haddenhomes.com today. I can spot these red flags during showings and save you from a costly mistake. And if you found this helpful, check out the video I've linked to another one right here. It's the perfect follow-up to what we just covered. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.